When the Western Roman Empire collapsed, Europe entered a period of instability. Cities shrank, libraries disappeared, and much of the classical knowledge of Greece and Rome seemed to fade into darkness. But that knowledge didn't vanish. It moved first eastward, then south, into the hands of Muslim scholars who would protect it, expand it, and eventually return it to Europe centuries later. This is the story of how the Islamic world became the guardian of ancient knowledge and how that preserved wisdom helped spark Europe's eventual revival. After the rise of the Islamic caliphates in the 7th and 8th centuries, Muslim leaders began gathering the world's learning. In Baghdad, the Abbasid rulers built a center unlike anything Europe had at the time, the House of Wisdom. It wasn't just a library, it was a research institute, a translation hub, and a meeting place for scholars of every background. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Persians, Arabs, Africans, and Greeks worked side by side, translating the works of Plato, Aristotle, Hippocrates, Euclid, and hundreds of ancient thinkers into Arabic. They didn't merely copy the texts, they corrected them, debated them, and wrote commentaries that improved on the originals. This translation movement stretched across the Islamic world, in Damascus, Cairo, Cordoba, and Samarkand. Scholars preserved manuscripts that would have been lost forever. They also expanded them, using ancient knowledge as a foundation for new breakthroughs. Mathematicians like Al-Khwarizmi created algebra. Physicians like Ibn Sina wrote encyclopedias that became standard medical references for centuries. Astronomers mapped the stars with precision Europe wouldn't match until the Renaissance. Geographers, chemists, philosophers, and engineers built on the Greek and Roman traditions and pushed them forward. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, wars and instability made these texts difficult to access. Monasteries preserved some knowledge, but much of the classical world's intellectual foundation remained out of reach. Europe had no major translation centers, and few scholars could read Greek. The Islamic world, by contrast, had become the safe house for global knowledge. The turning point came in the 11th century when European scholars began traveling to Muslim Spain and Sicily. Places like Toledo, under mixed Christian and Muslim influence, became translation gateways. European scholars discovered massive libraries filled with Arabic texts, which were themselves translations of Greek works that Europe no longer possessed. They began translating Arabic manuscripts into Latin. Aristotle, long lost in Europe, returned through Arabic copies. So did ancient medical texts, philosophical arguments, mathematical theories, and astronomical tables. Even the word algorithm comes from Al-Khwarizmi, whose work formed the basis of European mathematics. This wasn't just book copying, it was a transfer of knowledge that reshaped Europe. The ideas preserved and expanded by Muslim scholars fueled the rise of European universities. They influenced Christian theologians like Thomas Aquinas. They helped spark the Renaissance, a period defined by rediscovery of classical knowledge, much of which had been preserved in Arabic for centuries. Even Europe's scientific revolution, with figures like Copernicus and Galileo, built on astronomical data and mathematical foundations that flowed from the Islamic world. But the story is deeper than simple preservation. Muslim scholars didn't guard Greek and Roman knowledge as museum pieces, they advanced it. They challenged earlier thinkers, corrected mistakes, expanded theories, and produced original work that Europe later adopted. The Islamic world wasn't a bridge, it was a powerhouse of innovation. And because of that, Europe inherited not just the past, but centuries of new discoveries built on top of it. By the 1500s, as Europe entered its age of exploration and scientific revolution, many of the core ideas powering that transformation could be traced back to Arabic manuscripts. Hospitals, optics, surgical tools, algebra, navigational techniques, and scientific method all carried the imprint of the Islamic Golden Age. This chapter of history shows that civilizations don't rise alone. Knowledge travels, it survives because people choose to protect it. And for more than 500 years, while Europe struggled through periods of war and instability, Muslim scholars ensured that humanity's intellectual heritage lived on, waiting for the world to rediscover it.